What was supposed to be a triumphant result of taxi operators' resilience from humble beginnings to building an empire has turned into something else entirely. The taxi industry as we know it today is in shambles. The multi-billion rand industry that transports more than 60% of the country's population is stuck. You don't even have to dig deep to see it. It's in the videos we see online, the news reports, and the lived experiences of those of us who use taxis every day. So welcome you all to my channel. I'm so excited for this video, mainly because I've been trying to finish this video for a while now, and I'm excited to just let it go. I'm excited to wrap it up. Whatever I feel towards this video doesn't matter. Because what? I'm done. Great stuff. So please critique the topic and not me as a person. The taxi industry, the truth about it, is that it is ineffective and inefficient. It is trapped in its cycle of violence, trying to solve its problems that don't actually ever solve anything. Instead, it creates more tension towards or between associations. It creates more violence within the industry. And can you become more stagnated when you're already stagnant? I don't know, but it creates more stagnation. Instead of them solving their problems, they are pointing fingers at each other. That you're the cause that things are not moving forward. You're the cause. You're the one who's difficult. You're the one who's doing this. You're the one who's doing this. But instead of looking at themselves, I swear to you, if every single association looked at their own actions contributing towards the stagnation of this economy, this industry, I think we'd be far. I really do think so. Before we dive in, I do want to give credit where credit is due. I have a few papers that I used to help me with my facts, to help me with my research. If you'd like to know more about this topic, please go down below. My intentions of this video is not to bash the taxi industry. It is not to bash taxi owners. It's not to bash taxi drivers. It's not to bash anyone. My intentions for this video is to truly help us to create, like critically think in a comprehensive way. So what you're seeing here, ladies and gentlemen, is a video of over 20 minutes of me talking while my microphone was off. So yeah, as a time management babe, this was a disaster for me because I had to literally redo everything. But it's fine. On to the next. Yazi ngithathe le video ngakhuluma isikhathi eside. Thought I learned my lesson. No, it happened again. To understand what we're talking about, right? So that we know that we're going down the correct path and not just talking out of our asses, yeah. We need to understand the past. We need to understand the past about this industry. Oh my gosh, I hope yeah. We need to understand the past of this industry. We need to understand how it started, what were the circumstances during that time, so that we can understand the behavior of today. Right. So during the apartheid era, Black people were taken from their homes and dumped into the outskirts of towns and cities, places now known as townships. So, if you don't know what a township is where an area where the majority of the population is Black people, right? Can I say underdeveloped? Sure, it's very underdeveloped. A lot of people are still under the poverty line, but there are middle class people as well. So, but the gist of it is that there's a majority of Black people living there. And they had to transport or use transportation daily to and from work. And this caused a problem because trains and buses were inefficient and expensive, right? I think owners of taxis, buses and trains were really not in the business of catering to Black people, so it wasn't really their top priority, right? So that's how the Black community or the taxi industry came to be, out of necessity for the Black community, right? So now that we understand that, in 1977, things changed, right? Things changed that The government introduced a legislation that allowed taxi owners to operate freely and legally. This meant that taxi owners didn't have to use sedans anymore for taxis, and that they could get more people in a vehicle, make more money, and thus actually building something that's legit. So before, I believe that they were driving sedans and they could only be limited to specific number of people, or some people just operated illegally because of the circumstances they were dealing with. Okay, so taxi industries had to still deal with oppressive apartheid policies. But in 1987, that's where the real things started. The government decided to deregulate the taxi industry. Before we get mad, before we have a reaction, let's understand what deregulation is and why, or what is it used for. Regulation is when the government reduces or removes the rules that control how an industry operates. In theory, it's supposed to promote competition and growth by making it simpler for people to enter the market. But in practice, especially in the taxi industry, it creates chaos. The deregulation of transportation brought havoc to the industry. According to Jose Moore, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this pronunciation. I'll put it here because I'm struggling to understand, is it, what what language is it? Because Jose, obviously it's Spedi, I think, and More or Mora, what were they trying to do? But according to Josimor, a special working group organized by the Minister of Transportation reported that after deregulation, an additional 45,000 unregistered taxi entered the market on top of the 40,000 that were already affiliated with the South African Black Taxi Association.
Which leads me to my point. I don't believe that the apartheid government was actually really genuine, like they were really trying to help this industry grow into becoming something better. I think with the way it was, they were trying to destabilize this industry. I think they saw the potential that was in it and just tried to destabilize it. Because you have to understand the times that we were in, guys. Like, we have to understand that it was a time where democracy was soon. Like, their time was soon.
What I think about it. But tell me, do you guys think that the deregulation of the taxi industry was actually for promoting a healthy industry and growing it, or was it to destabilize it? Like, I'm really all for answers. And tell me more. Don't just say, yeah, I think it was for this. Just like indulge me in your thought process. Right. So permits were handed out like flyers. There were no check there were no checks, no background checks, no skills required. Pirates entered the industry. Hell broke loose. Some forged permits, others bought them. Many didn't even bother getting them at all. So by 1994, we had 70,000 taxis legally operating, as well as 45,000 taxis illegally operating on South African soil. So, guys, we need to be in the mindset of the business owners at that time and understand how they could have been feeling, right? If you are a business owner and in this sector that you are working in, all of a sudden there's a surge of new competition, how are you going to feel? You're going to be stressed. You're going to be angry. Um, there's a lot of emotions that you are going to definitely feel. That's why I am not trivializing the seriousness of the over flooding of new competition in the taxi industry, right? I think that's a fact that if something like this happens, this is how people are going to feel, the business owners are going to react. My problem was their response, right? Because at the end of the day, guys, we need to understand that bad things happen. You know, the saying that when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Yeah, businesses can't go around killing competitors, right, guys? Like, you need to learn how to fix problems because problems are always going to be there. So if your response is always violence, what does it say about you? In true retrospect, like, what does it say about you if the only way you know how to solve violence is, I mean, problems is by violence, by forcing people, by it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. It might get you what you want for the for the short term, but in the long term, what are you creating? What environment are you allowing into? Is the black taxi industry will always reflect upon the black community. The reason because is that it is one of the few, if not only in this country, right? One of the few industries that are majority uh, led by black people, right? So how it is led, the occurrences that happen there, how we handle problems will always reflect on the black community. And this is not from, I don't like to make things about race, but when they are, they just are. Okay. Because I see some kind of trend that I'm not understanding and I'm trying to get more educated on it to be able to speak on authority. So, but yeah, there's a problem with leadership in black communities, and we need to start talking about it. We need to start talking about the education that we have as the black community. I don't like how we are uneducated in terms of topics when it comes to the country. What I mean by that is like I'm not saying go to university and study, right? Because I know our history. I know that there are some things that just are not possible for other people. But what I mean is that wanting to be involved into understanding the different things that are being talked about, right? So that when we put someone in a leadership position, we don't just give them the whole responsibility and say, you know what, we trust you. Because, guys, we have been proven so many times that if you just give someone the whole responsibility, right, and just freedom, this is what happens, right? Things don't really turn out wow. Okay, is a taxi association. It's basically a group that represents a bunch of taxi owners. They negotiate taxi routes, try to resolve conflicts, and are supposed to maintain some kind of order. But when you have 450 of them, all with their own agendas, you get chaos. The first major association was the South African Black Taxi Association, but others followed quickly. For example, the South African Long Distance Taxi Associations. These groups began fighting each other for dominance over routes, facilities, and passengers. Each one wanted recognition, control, and power. Today, the industry is so fragmented that it can't speak with one voice. That means no serious conversations with the government, no unified goals, no collective strategies, just ego and territory wars. Like, they're still facing the same issues, if we're being honest. There's nothing really progressive about their issues. And I don't think anything is gonna be solved when they couldn't see it in the past, guys. And I don't want to be pessimistic, but I want to truly be honest when it comes to how people how these people see problems and how they plan on solving them. You know, back then there wasn't really a lot. There was a lot of newcomers and new people, but it was still manageable to the point where people could still come to a resolution, right? A solution could have come despite what was happening, right? But there was still no end goal. They couldn't commit to one goal. They couldn't commit to one path, something that could represent all of them when they were discussing with the government. I think that's why the discussions with governments never really pan out because there are so many associations who have their own agendas. Someone buy me a couch. Buy me a couch. Okay, so let's talk about the government intervention. Did they try to intervene in this chaotic industry? Did they try to do anything really? And they did. In 1995, the government introduced the NTTT, which is the National Taxi Task Team. Oh my gosh, I got that right. I got that right. Which was there to actually re-regulate and modernize the taxi industry. This was confronted with immense resistance from the taxi industry. They were not for it. They did not want it. Um, yeah, they just saw it as less control, more paperwork, and less independence, I guess. And since then, there have been multiple of attempts to intervene into this industry with really no results. And we can attest that to lack of clear ways to enforce these policies or these, what are they even called? These projects. Um, oh, no clear structure to reinforce them, resistance from the taxi industry, and just it just confused things even more. But I do want to say that the government didn't fail completely or by themselves in this situation. The taxi industry didn't want to be helped, or they only wanted to be helped on their terms. Let's talk about the kind of businessmen running this industry. Too many of them want the money but don't want the knowledge. They're willing to fight, intimidate, even kill, but not willing to sit down, learn how to run a business, how to manage staff, or how to serve customers. That's the real problem. They refuse to evolve. Instead of building sustainable and scalable transport services, they stuck in gangland mentality. You can't shoot your way to good leadership. And with that, I want us to understand that not everyone in the taxi industry is violent. I don't believe that's the case, but quite a few, quite a lot. And those the people who have the majority power are the ones that are really gathering a bad name for this industry. And yeah, just the way they problem solving, man. Like, I mean, like you're always gonna have problems, guys, and I just don't think violence is the answer because until when is it always going to be violence? Like you guys are dealing, you're not dealing with drugs, right? You're dealing with human beings, are your customers, but you guys are acting like mafia gangs. Like, can we please understand that? Like, does that make sense?
Brutal killings in broad daylight have come to define taxi violence in South Africa. But when people die, their loved ones are left to pick up the pieces.
I'm gonna first start with the drivers, right? When I thought about taxi drivers, maybe a few weeks back, before I actually did my research and I started thinking really critically because I really lacked critical thinking skills, I really always looked at taxi drivers with a bit of disdain. I had a lot of thoughts and opinions towards them, which are still relevant, right? That they rude and they have just no customer service training whatsoever, and I don't know if they actually understand the kind of service that they're providing and to who they're providing it to, right? They treat their customers like they're doing them a favor, right? They really don't care about the road rules. Everyone knows them as people who don't really respect the traffic laws, right? But I also came to the conclusion that not everyone is like that. And even though my complaints are valid, I need to also understand their side in terms of what kind of industry are they working for. And that might not be easy. Working for an industry that is very violent in its nature, working for an industry that seems to be really has reached its dead end, working for an industry the taxi rank, guys. Like, imagine going to work every day and you're going to a taxi, filthy taxi rank. Psychologically, what is that doing to you? And somehow I always blame the taxi drivers. Like, don't they see where they're working? Like, don't they see in what environment they are working in? But I realized that, yo, how much are these people getting paid? Right, the real business is with taxi associations because that's where the most power is held, not with just one taxi operator, but when there's a collective of them, that's when the power is being held. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the customer, I'm gonna talk about my experience, right? Because I have first first-hand experience because I'm a customer, right? I do acknowledge the importance of the taxi industry, right? I'm not moneyed, so I can't afford Ubers all the time, and taxis are affordable, right? I do acknowledge how important they are to our society, but that does not mean I do not have complaints. My first complaint is the attitude. They're really acting like they are mafia gangs, guys, and it just doesn't make sense because it's like, two, the way they treat their customers, right? I think they are not in the game to really improve their service. They're in the business of making money. And we just happen to be there. I genuinely feel like that when it comes to taxis and how they operate. I just feel like we just happen to there, but their business is making money, you know? how the taxis are. When you have to go to a taxi rank, you need to risk your safety, right? Because of the environment that taxis have allowed themselves to be in, right? I understand that what is happening in Joburg, for example, is really a serious situation that the government should be handling. But my thing is, how is it that you're able to force, kill, do all of these violence, but you can't keep your place clean? You can't force the people who work there every single day to keep the place clean. You can't force the people who are having shops around there to keep the place clean. You can't force the paras there to keep the place clean. I don't know. I don't know. The infrastructure there is just terrible, guys. Like, it's just terrible. And it makes me so sad because I really cherish the taxi industry for what it is and what it represents. But I think yearly I'm starting to have, I don't know, external factors that are adding fuel to the fire. Many politicians and police officers own their own fleet of taxis. That means when things go sideways, they don't act as law enforcers, they protect their interests. Taxi violence becomes political, conflict becomes business strategy. Add to that the rise of professional hitmen. Inkabi, guys, inkabi. I think the taxi industry has created its own industry on the side. People have seen an opportunity to kill taxi drivers. And what's so ironic, I'll quote this if I find it, but someone said in one of the PDFs I was reading that it's so ironic that they're finding this industry that is killing them. It's killing them. Like, it's killing drivers, it's killing taxi owners, but it doesn't matter because it's not you, right? Which is so weird. Anyway, here's the thing: one meeting won't solve the problem, one policy will not solve the problem. And let's be honest, waiting on the government is like waiting for rain. Real change, it has to come within, guys. The taxi industry has to decide by itself that it wants to change. The people who are causing havoc have to decide that they want change within themselves, and let go of ego, let go of pride, and see this whole industry holistically and not just fragments of this is the problem, this is the problem, but truly see it for what it is and look for problems that are not just going to solve the problems now, but are going to solve the problems even in a decade. Because at this point, the taxi industry is moving backwards, if that's even possible, but it is. And if the people inside the fire, the people who are causing the violence, on all of that, can't see that for themselves, I don't know, guys. We can't teach grown men. I mean, we can't teach grown men to like stop killing. We can't teach them, like, especially the people in the sex industry. Like, you can't really teach them anything. You know. I think it really has to come from them, and whatever interventions people are trying to do with the government, I don't think it'll ever work until those people actually take responsibility for their actions and actually understand the complexities and the intricacies of their industry to truly understand where it could go, where they are now. Because I don't know, I will really be discouraged if this industry is still the same after 10 years. So I don't know. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you guys really learned something or you have any thoughts. If you do, please talk about them down in the comment section. I really love to hear other perspectives. If you know anything, do you know someone who's a taxi driver? You're a taxi driver yourself. Like, how are you seeing this whole situation? Like, let's talk about it. Okay, bye.